Welcome to the Listening Lounge, where we unravel stories and ignite conversations one ear at a time. Here's your host of the Listening Lounge, Derek Dunn.
Welcome to this edition of the Listening Lounge podcast, where we unravel stories and ignite conversations one ear at a time. I'm Derek Dunn, your host, and thanks for tuning in and joining us. You can like, follow, and subscribe to the Listening Lounge, as you can access the podcast on Facebook, the YouTube channels, RJ on the Air, and the Listening Lounge, Instagram, and Spotify. Thank you for spreading the word, and please share the news about the podcast. My guest for the third episode of the Listening Lounge is Cameron Ireland. He is the coordinator of marketing and graphic design for both the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, known as CETL, and Business and Industry at Illinois Eastern Community College. Cameron and I are both employees for IECC. Thanks for joining me here on the podcast, Cameron, and it's always good talking to you. I played a lot of video games growing up as a kid, and I still do. I'm a gamer at heart, and there were times when artificial intelligence, known as AI, would be the ally or adversary as a player in the game. And for the past couple of years, we've seen it being incorporated into technology, such as our smartphones, cameras, video editing apps. It's just mind-blowing stuff, and just want to know your thoughts about the progression you've seen of AI so far.
No, it's crazy because I know, the term AI has really been a buzzword recently. And I think it's really easy to forget that AI has been a concept since the 80s. I know a lot of people traditionally think of AI as generative AI, ChatGPT, but I mean, even looking back in the 80s, there was a very, very early software, and this is kind of interesting, but the software was coded. I believe it was an accounting software, basically, where you would type it and somebody manually did this. So they put in, I think, 10 or 20,000 variables to different questions people could ask an accountant. And so they'd ask the question, it would give them an answer. And this was a software that someone created in the 80s. And ironically, it was purchased by a very large company and then shelved, which is very interesting. But I mean, AI has been around forever. And that's just an example of artificial intelligence, way back in the 80s. And, you've got reference video games, your AI teammates, enemies, anything like that. And gaming has been big. You look at, I mean, any form of automation you can think of. You had the little paperclip guy on the Windows stuff with little answers. I mean, that's a form of AI. But really, in the last 2 years, seeing how quickly generative AI has developed is crazy. I remember probably August of 2022, I stumbled on generative AI software for the first time, and it was a copywriting tool. So it could help you basically take clutter out of interviews or help you word things differently. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then before Christmas break is when I first saw generative AI images. And I don't know if you're familiar. I think his name's Ralph Steadman. He was an illustrator for the Hunter S. Thompson books and a few other things. His style was super loose lines everywhere, blots, and all the AI generated stuff looked like that. So, I mean, I liked Ralph Steadman's artwork, so I thought it was really cool. But that's all you could get. I mean, you had not a whole lot you could really prompt. That's just how it looked. 2 weeks go by on Christmas break. Next thing you know, I come back into work and images are already better. So, completely mind blown. Just start messing around, trying to make some avatars and stuff like that because I think it's cool. And then, literally 2 weeks later, a month later, keeps getting better. Then you've got the Dolly integrations. You've got Adobe Firefly throwing their hat in the ring. And now, I mean, it's pretty commonplace. I think a lot of people are using generative AI for content. Definitely on Facebook, I think it's very easy to tell when people just, take a caption from ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever and say, okay, here's my social media caption. But it's a really great tool, and it's crazy. Just the progression of this is unlike any technology I've really seen because it learns from itself and it's always improving itself. So, I mean, if you start that data pool early, I mean, it can fully basically just learn and grow itself once you do that initial groundwork, so it's pretty crazy.
How has AI revolutionized the field of graphic arts and design in recent years? You said it keeps getting better and better as you have used AI in your work.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, AI is so multifaceted. So, I mean, whether you're generating, assets for a graphic, whether you are using AI to generate a structure to help you brainstorm how you could create something. Um, a big one I had done recently, we used the mobile studio, for some headshots. And, it's a circle backdrop, basically covers your shoulders. That's it, solid color. So obviously outside of that circle, you have my whole area, all that. Well, with AI, basically you mask off the person and it can fully generate a gray or whatever studio background with simulated studio lighting in 15 minutes, which was one of the more crazy things I've seen recently. Excuse me. As far as the field itself, I think it really allows people to be more creative and to just really make things that pop. I think as AI was trained and it's been trained on millions and millions and millions of pieces, there's some really good pieces of graphic design content in there. There may be some bad pieces, but that's kind of ultimately where the human interaction with AI needs to come. But just ease of creating assets, little patterns. If there's a cool geometric pattern on Google, right, and it's like 300 pixel by 300 pixel, pretty low res. If I make a vector of that little 400 by 400, whatever, put it in the corner, and then use generative fill in Photoshop, it can fully create a seamless, high quality background of that asset for me to use, which is, again, just a little piece, but I think as a supplementary tool, it basically, if you're a graphic designer or if you are doing photography or even video editing or anything, it really just makes the really cool things or the really complicated things simpler. And I think it also can really enable you to be more creative with the software you use, more creative thinking. Because basically, whatever idea you have, it can help you execute. So I know I was working on a graphic and I kind of explained what I wanted, what information I wanted. And the funny thing with AI is obviously it doesn't know English, so it tries to kind of draw symbols that vaguely look like written English. But basically, if it generates me a flyer and the color segmenting looks great, or yeah, it would be cool to have a circle photo up here or whatever, you can import that AI generated image into Photoshop and kind of rebuild that AI generated image in Photoshop with proper spelling, using their ideas on color segmenting or using their ideas of where your photo should go, where your call to action should go, making sure, and this is another really big one that's I think is great. You can upload an image to Copilot and have it check the colors for accessibility. So it can make sure colors are visible and the contrast ratio is high enough for people who are colorblind. Just in general for readability, make sure the color contrast is good. Can also come up with color palettes that have a really good contrast ratio. So if I'm designing a graphic for whatever, and I say, give me 5 colors with a good contrast ratio, the text I'll be working with is white and black. It could give you 5 colors with a great contrast ratio for that text. And again, it basically just allows you to streamline your process, step out of your comfort zone, and maybe use colors you wouldn't traditionally use in design. And I think overall, in my opinion, I think it's a good thing for design. And it's just going to continually keep changing and I think streamlining the process of design even more.
You talked about the graphic side of AI, and in the news recently, we saw that Randy Travis released a new song title where that came from. And I watched a video of that process to create the song in his own voice using AI, and like when Randy was topping the country charts in the 80s and 90s, and it was just fascinating to watch, and I was blown away by listening to it. And for Randy to have all those strokes, 10 plus years ago, and to hear his voice, I think that was really cool. So I think that is also a sign that the vocal side of AI is gaining ground.
Oh, definitely. I know I've seen videos and audio of like Beatles songs, right? With John Lennon singing and it sounds exactly like him. And I think, again, that's a technology that had existed, a few years ago. It wasn't really called AI, but it was very, very, very rough. I mean, as a joke, we would try to get like Family Guy character clips and load them into these things and try to be able to get like Peter Griffin to say whatever we wanted and stuff like that, which was hilarious, but it was so hilarious because it was so bad. And I think now the way these work, um, and again, they're all just these learning models where it's fed things over and over again. So like in your example, this AI bot or software was probably literally fed hundreds of hours of him in the studio with no backings, him live, everything. You know what I mean? Him just speaking and just builds this flawless emulator basically of him. And I think AI in music is really interesting as well. I know Google Labs, which is where they'll release all their experimental AI programs, has one for instrumentals, which I think you would find pretty interesting. You can type in the BPM, the melody, what instruments, the genre, and I think you can run a 70-second audio clip that they'll generate that's set up to automatically loop, and they'll give you three different ones. So I mean, again, I think it's changing the game with like what we can do with background music that's royalty free, because now instead of using the same stale royalty free background music everybody has, you can prompt to really create something that fits the video, or let's say fits the vibe of Frontier Community College or whatever you're trying to go for, and it's totally unique and fully licensed through a Creative Commons license for yourself. So I think AI in music is developing like crazy right now. I know you've probably heard about the AI YouTube channels that are crazy. So people will get these AI voices. They will have AI come up with, 10 topics. So if people are into like the cold case stories or whatever, 10 unsolved cold cases in California or whatever, it will fully write the script. It can generate images and visuals for that, use the voice, and basically these people run, 10 AI YouTube channels with all these different niche audiences and make a ton of money because they find very interesting, obscure stories for their audience. AI writes the script, AI reads it, AI comes up with a thumbnail with a call to action, AI comes up with a title that works with the algorithm. They do keywords, meta tags, and it's really a crazy operation as far as audio goes in AI. And I think it's already happening, but I know I struggle sometimes if I find a topic I think is interesting and it's an AI generated video. Sometimes it's hard for me to watch it just because I know it's AI generated. But I think as time progresses, there will be a point where you will not be able to tell an AI generated video from a human made video unless, and YouTube just added this, you have to specify if your video is AI generated or not when you're uploading it. So I mean, I think that's, as far as, metadata will be the only way to tell if something is an AI generated.
Cameron Ireland with me here on the Listening Lounge. This brings me to my next question, the legitimacy. Was it AI generated or is this for real? I think of Mel Blanc of Looney Tunes as an example where he could do all kinds of voices and he was a great voiceover artist. I think there's people out there talented like Mel. Is it like legitimately done by someone or is it AI generated?
Well, and I think that's a similar phenomenon to, you look back to 1920s Hollywood or 1930s Hollywood, all those special effects they did. And I've seen some crazy videos where it looks like a guy literally disappears through a wall or anything, all that was handmade, right? And I'm sure when special effects started coming out, especially computer generated special effects, people really were having the discussion of, is this still an art form, right? Well, if you look in movie credits, there's hundreds of people on that staff list for the movie whose whole specialty is digital computer effects, right? So I think as AI evolves and people really begin to specialize in whatever it is within AI they're wanting to do, I think it will slowly gain more credibility. I just think the big thing with it is specifying if it was used on a large scale like that. I mean, and again, with special effects in movies, they're never claiming, hey, these are real stunts. Hey, you know what I mean? Again, it's all implied knowledge, and I think eventually AI will get there, but it's very interesting when you look at some talented voice actors or, when is it too much? And I think that's probably partially why there were some of those strikes with writers and actors is just kind of, again, if you have like Leonardo DiCaprio who's spoken hundreds of hours of lines, theoretically you could feed that into AI. You could feed his images and videos into AI, and then you could have an AI Leonardo DiCaprio in your movie, right? Is that right or wrong? I think it's wrong, but I think there's a really fine line that can be difficult to kind of visualize sometimes. But I think as time progresses, there'll be more boundaries and kind of things set up for that.
When you're working with AI in graphic arts and design, have you noticed how it has sped up your progress on working on projects since AI can be quick like a snap of a finger?
No, definitely. I think it has 100% streamlined my productivity a ton. Even looking at, if I'm trying to come up with a social media caption for OSHA training, right? It's really, really powerful when you look at help me come up with a good call to action for this, right? I would come up with a caption. How can this be improved? How can this call to action be improved? And here's the amazing part that I really like. If you have a very strong caption that performed well and you're posting it again in a couple weeks, give me 4 or 5 different variations of this caption, just so again, for the audience, it isn't stale. So I mean, from a copywriting side, it's great. Really can streamline what you can do. Another great piece, if I'm interviewing somebody and it's a 35-minute long interview, I can feed the whole transcript to AI and get a concise summary of what happened, breaking things down by time, just to help me in post trying to find key moments or highlight key things, what to crop out. If I missed anything, I mean, and obviously you've got your passive voice remover. That's a really good one. Is if you're doing captions to help you remove a passive voice from your writing. And again, design-wise, I've touched on this, but just helping you create those supplementary assets quickly. If I'm doing a small business pop-up for the SBDC and I can't find a drone shot of the city of Fairfield online for a background shot, if you prompt drone shot, small Midwestern town in Southern Illinois, downtown, it'll generate you a pretty nice looking small town downtown. You throw that in the background in Photoshop, add your Gaussian blur, add your other colors and everything, and all of a sudden that's just a great supplementary asset that kind of gives that implied feel of what the event would be like or anything like that. And again, if I didn't have AI, would I really drive to Fairfield, get a drone out, and take a photo for a flyer that should only take, 15, 20 minutes to make? It allows me to create higher quality designs, more in-depth designs in the same amount of time as it would normally, as the same amount of time it would normally take to create things.
Has there been anything that has surprised you the most about AI? And if so, what would it be? I was watching a webinar a while back and I submitted a question to the speaker and he answered my question toward the end. And my question was, what surprised him the most about AI? And he said one word, speed. What has surprised you the most about it?
No, definitely speed. And again, that progression is pretty mind blowing. And again, I haven't seen technology move this quick. In my opinion, another surprising thing is just how well it can handle an extreme amount of data. I make websites and modify the IECC website, and, I could feed it 15,000 lines of code and it could read that, process it, make it mobile friendly or add more CSS styles or make sure the color contrast ratio is all good or anything like that, in 30 seconds or less, which is insane to me. The processing power of AI is nuts, and that's continued to improve. I remember with image generation, it used to take a few minutes to generate, again, images that looked really shaky. And yes, that kind of looks like a basketball player, but you have to squint your eyes. Like it kind of does. It's almost there, but it doesn't quite look right to, yeah, that looks photorealistic, or yeah, that looks like an animation, right? Or anything like that. So just to see its processing power, and I think its overall versatility, I think people would be surprised about. I think, again, if someone says AI, people, especially educators, will think writing papers for me. And I think a lot of students probably think writing papers for me. But I know my brother at U of I helped him create his e-portfolio with AI to write some of the code for him, kind of help that vision come to life. And just as a time saver, it would take forever to just, again, brainstorm. It almost gives you your shell, and then you can go in and make your modifications. But just having that shell saves so much time. So I think that's another big one, is just if you truly understand, your core AI products you use, you can become ridiculously efficient at work. And you're able to take on more things. Because I know at work, I'm always one to try to help as many people as I can, as many people as I can in a week, as many projects as I can, just because I feel like I'm a vessel for other people to express their creativity, and I want to make whatever they're doing improved or the highest quality I can. And I think AI has really allowed me to be extremely efficient and really make things that I'm proud of and other people are proud of, to say, hey, look, this is my website, this is my web page, this is my logo, anything. I mean, there's so many great pieces there. So I'd say those are probably some of the most just mind-blowing things to me, just how versatile it is, its processing power, the speed, again, of it developing is huge. And probably the last one, just I think how quickly you can figure it out. It seems pretty daunting because it's so open-ended. But I think if you really get in there, get in the lab and start working on stuff, you'll kind of understand your own workflow with AI pretty quickly.
Cameron Ireland with me on the Listening Lounge podcast. One thing is for sure, AI isn't going away anytime soon. What advancements can we expect to see in the future for AI? And you could also talk about it from a graphic arts and design perspective.
No, I think definitely, circling back to video games, I know AIs in video games have been getting a lot better. I don't know, are you familiar with like the NBA 2K games, basketball simulation games, basically? The AI in those games now, if you set yourself to running a zone defense, the AI is smart enough to guard its area. It's smart enough to know when to break that zone to go for a lane steal, or know when to double. It's smart enough when to shoot a three, when to not shoot a three, when to pass. And this was a new improvement this year to the game, but just making the AIs and that smarter. I know, again, I'd say if you're playing like a Call of Duty or something, right? Some of the characters in the campaign mode or anything like that, smarter. Again, Fortnite's AIs, they understand who's an enemy, who's not, when they should fire at somebody, when they should take cover, when they should heal you, all that stuff. So I think from a video game side, it's advancing and just making them, again, the whole term AI in gaming, generally they're terrible. In years past with 2K, if you had an AI on your team, you were done. They couldn't shoot, they couldn't play defense. And now this year, if an AI is guarding you, good luck scoring, because it's never going to leave the assignment. It knows you're a good player. It will pick off lanes if they try to pass it to you. So I think they're just going to continually refine things. I think design wise, or let's say Adobe Suite wise, right? I think it wouldn't be that far fetched to say in the next year or two, you could import your clips into Premiere and prompt it for what you want and how you want it to be edited, and it will edit your entire sequence for you. I think that's coming up very soon. I mean, legitimately, I wouldn't be surprised if Adobe announces some stuff at their summit this year or next year about that. I mean, I remember when they first announced the implementation of AI in Premiere or in InDesign or anything like that, the initial scope of it was nothing crazy. And now in InDesign, which is, publishing software for newsletters or anything, you can generate images, you can generate styles, you can do all that. And really, I'm very excited. I think once After Effects has more AI support, it would be great for me because I know the power of the program. I just haven't ever. I mean, that's again one of those programs you need those 10,000 hours in it to fully be able to do everything. But if you can fully do everything in After Effects, I mean, you can make some crazy good stuff. And I think it's just going to make technology, it's going to make multimedia production, it's going to make graphic design, it's going to make coding, it's going to make anything more accessible to people. And I think that's really the great thing about AI is if you want to learn a foreign language, you could talk to an AI bot and tell it to only speak to you in Spanish. And if you make a mistake, correct you. You could tell it to speak to you at a third grade level and slowly progress. And I mean, right there is you being directly involved in another culture, learning the language at your own pace, completely organically. And I mean, again, I think it just lowers the barrier to entry to almost everything it touches. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know, but I think definitely the future of AI development, I think, is just continually improving the processes and making whatever it is more accessible to a wider audience, making it easier for people to start, making it easier for people to be more efficient. And at the end of the day, I think this is another interesting statement, but I mean, AI at the end of the day will make people and continue to make people more creative because it's almost like you've cloned yourself, right?
We've talked about AI in multiple areas from photography, video games, voiceover work. Cameron, is there anything else you want to mention about AI that you haven't mentioned yet that stands out to you about AI?
I think a really cool aspect, just looking at the photography aspect again, I mean, you've got the solar eclipse that happened, right? I didn't have the ideal lens for it. I mean, when I zoomed in, it probably was just, I mean, in the tiniest corner, right? And I could kind of see the solar flares, could kind of see everything. Even with a full frame camera, by the time I got that framed, it was a tiny bit blurry. So I believe it's Topaz AI. I think I threw it in that, completely sharpened the image, looked like I took it with a massive telephoto lens. Um, so that's a really cool advancement, I think, in photography. And again, one of my favorite things to do with headshots now, you know, any wall with good natural lighting, we can take your headshot on that. We can just swap out the background and swap out the lighting to be artificially generated, and it's going to look like it was in a full studio. Excuse me. I think that's something that I really think is cool with AI, and probably one of the most satisfying pieces to me is, you're taking headshots of 40 people on a wall with natural lighting and just tell them, trust the process. I promise it's going to look good. In the back of your mind, you're like, okay, hopefully the AI can actually do what I'm hoping it does. If not, a bunch of people are going to have headshots on yellow walls, you know what I mean? But I think that's one of the coolest challenges and coolest things about it, again, is it just helps you be more creative and it helps you have less boundaries. I could have people come into my office, got a nice wall, got a window, take the headshot, the lighting will be great, background's there, AI will help match the artificial lighting to the natural lighting, and I mean, it looks like it's shot in a studio. So that's another really cool piece, I think, is AI in photography, and I think it's another one where there's a really fine line between doing too much and having it improve what you're doing. But I think if you can stay on that line, I think it's a really, really cool advancing field within AI.
Let's talk something else besides AI for a brief moment. You are a fan of live sports. We were talking about sports before hopping on the pod. Who is your favorite athlete of all time? And if you were given the option to time travel to the past to watch one athlete, who would it be and why?
So favorite athlete, it's really interesting. I've always really liked Manute Bol. I just think he was so unique. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the photo of him swimming in a swimming pool. I mean, he literally looks like a shark or something. I mean, he's huge, looks like 12 feet tall in a pool. And I really loved his game, and I loved the stories about him. I've heard that he was like 40 when he went to the NBA, like he wasn't 22. I've heard he killed a lion with a spear. I just think the whole lore behind Manute Bol, the fact that he would have to literally drink beers 24/7 to not lose weight every single game he played, sit at the sidelines drinking beer. I mean, it's just crazy. And I think, if he played in today's NBA, teams would go crazy for the three-point shooting ability. There was flashes then, obviously the rim protection. There's nobody better. I've never seen anybody, besides Wembanyama that's above that 7'4", 7'5" range that can move that fluidly, is that athletic, that coordinated, has that good a touch. So he's definitely probably one of my favorite athletes just for his player archetype. I mean, you will never see another player exactly like him. In the time and when he played too, I think it's crazy the NBA kind of took a chance on him, because you look at what was considered kind of mainstream at the time. It was 7 foot, 280 pound, 275 pound big men that just worked the post. You know what I mean? There wasn't a whole lot of playmaking. It was mostly just back someone down, drop step, do a hook, whatever. And Manute Bol, crazy finesse, great touch, could dribble a little bit, could shoot the three, could pass and play make really well. So he's just a really interesting player archetype, and probably is one of my favorites. And then kind of the second part of your question, I know you've probably seen some of the memes of why weren't there any cameras when Wilt scored 100. I think that would be interesting to go back, and see if he really did, score that much. Because conveniently, I've seen footage of Wilt in high school, and I've never seen any footage of him in his infamous game. So I mean, I think Wilt, as an athlete too, just seeing how dominant he would have been, whenever he was playing in the 60s and 70s, would have been really cool.
I was thinking of Wilt earlier when I typed in that question, and I think it'd be fascinating to watch him play in today's game. And I've always liked watching big men play. And another big who I like in today's game is Chet Holmgren, type of the unicorn, tall, lanky player, can do just about anything.
No, I mean, with Wilt, I think if he came into today's NBA, he would be one of those unicorn type of players. I mean, I think, what was it in college? He could have qualified for the Olympics in like high jump or something like that. I think he was great at hurdles. I mean, 7'1" dude running hurdles against guys that are 6 feet tall and below and winning races. I mean, to think about how quickly he could get running and the speed he had was nuts. But no, the NBA is definitely interesting. I mean, Chet, I really like Chet. Being close to Terre Haute, I really like Robbie Avila too. I know he's at SLU now. When I was in Chicago at my internship, we were a mid-sized scouting company, so we did player showcases, AAU tournaments, and player rankings. And I remember I did one on Robbie, and kind of forgot about it. A couple of years go by, and all of a sudden I see him on Indiana State, and I'm like, holy crap, is that Robbie Avila from the Riverside Brooksfield shootout? And it was, I mean, fit the exact bill, mid-major player, slept on. But I really, really like those playmaking bigs that can pass, work the post, spot up, and I think, you're going to see a big influx of that coming into the league. I know Illinois, 7'1" guy coming in that can stretch the floor really well, might get that 6'9" guy from Real Madrid's team as well, which would be crazy. Playing top tier Real Madrid, projected lottery pick in 2025. So I think hopefully we may land him here in a few weeks. And then I think I'll feel better about the season coming up.
Thanks, Cameron, for swinging by the listening lounge and hanging out with me for a little bit. I thought our talk about AI was fascinating, and always good to talk a little sports, especially the NBA at the end. And we'll have to do this again sometime. Thanks for hopping on the pod with me.
Yeah, no problem. I do definitely. I mean, just to kind of plant that seed, I've got AI right now recently has been really great at helping me kind of dissect viral videos. And if I see a video that performed really well in the NBA sphere, kind of looking at their title, looking at their script, and coming up with similar things to replicate virality. So, I mean, there's a ton of really interesting things you can do as far as working with algorithms and all that too. But nope, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully you have a good one.
Again, that was Cameron Ireland joining me here on the Listening Lounge podcast. Again, the Listening Lounge podcast. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube by way of the RG on the Air and the Listening Lounge podcast channels on there. You can also find us on Spotify. Look us up at the Listening Lounge, and also on Instagram. And would also like to mention there will be some highlight audio clips that will be posted to our Facebook page and also Spotify as well. Until next time, I'm Derek Dunn, your host of the Listening Lounge, where we unravel stories and ignite conversations one ear at a time. Thanks for joining us.